barbecue capital of the world and home of Elvis Presley. Please welcome your co-host, Bob Furness.
But where else do you have an ecosystem of 400 people that are all living at the same place, connected to each other in another way? It is a microcosm of what happens in the world.
And from the tornado capital of the world, home of the Oklahoma Sooners, here's your co-host, Amos Tanuma.
So I once tweeted, customer experience is harder than rocket science. And I say that because there are formulas that can actually calculate launching rockets into the sky. I'm not smart enough to do those formulas. But there are no formulas whatsoever for calculating putting two strangers on a phone call in a contact center. And that's why I say customer experience is harder than rocket science. So what if I told you that the success of your contact center will not be about technology at all? Yes, technology is table stakes, but it'll be about much, much, much more than that. So let's jump in. I've got my partner in crime, Bob Furness. Bob, how are you, man?
Hey, good morning, Amos. Excited for this call. We've got some extra folks on the line today, so excited to introduce them in a second. But what you just talked about, I think, is really important. The answer to what's going to change, what's going to be the deciding factor in your contact center, to me, is the thing that you and I talk about often. It's people, it's humans. They're going to drive the success. And I had someone this week argue with me that bots and especially after we had a conversation about ChatGPT, that the future of the contact center is without a human. And I just don't agree with that. I believe that we're going to continue to scrape things off. We're going to continue to try to make technology more human-like. But I think that the human is in the contact center to stay. So if that's true, then they are the most important factor in the contact center. So how do we prepare them for success is the thing that we want to talk about today. With us today are two people who I have the highest respect for in their passion to help others succeed in business and in life. And I've got with us Karen Freed and Glenn Stoffel, who are both with an organization called Camp 4, which we'll let them talk about in just a moment. I worked with Glenn and Karen when I was at Blue Wolf and IBM. I am amazed at the alumni network at Blue Wolf and back in the day from when we all worked together. But I'm also confident that there were times in that period that we worked together that these two people made an impact on my success over the past 10 years. And while I was at Blue Wolf and since I left Blue Wolf. So with us, we've got Karen Freed. She's the CEO and co-founder of Camp 4. She's got a passion for employee experience and creating culture of empowerment and improvement that enables world-class performance. I love that tagline. She's driven to ensure that talent is truly ready to excel in their careers. And that gives you a little bit of an idea of what their organization does. With us also is Glenn Stoffel. If you've been with us since the beginning of our podcast world or have listened to in the past, Glenn was one of our
guests.
Sorry?
Yeah, one of our few guests. We never have guests on.
One of our few guests in the past. He believes in bringing a whole self to work and loves helping Camp 4 learners become clear about their stories, preparing them for landing in their next opportunity. So, Karen, I think you taught me that there's a better term for soft skills. In the contact center world, we know that it's important that I show myself to be human. And I've grown up in the contact center space, and we always said we needed product training, we needed process training, and we needed soft skills. But you guys have sort of flipped that on its head and don't call them soft skills. Tell me about that and tell me about why.
Thanks, Bob. And thanks for having us on the call today. We're excited to be here with you and sharing these ideas. So, yeah, you mentioned some things that are happening inside the world. Our technology is amping up. We're getting better platforms. Data is becoming more readily available to us. And the unique differentiator in any services organization, and you're talking about customer service itself, is the humans, being human at work, being able to take that data in real time and answer questions. And that sometimes those are your professional development skills. Those are your soft skills. No, that's anything but soft. Those are tough skills. They are things that need frameworks, that need practice, that need habits built around them so that people show up the best possible way in order to help people where they are.
So Glenn, how do we make sure those happen in a contact center? Let's expand the aperture a little bit. How do we make sure that happens to the field service person that comes to my house and helps me? How do I make sure that happens at the credit union that I was at the other day and I'm standing across the counter from someone? How do I make sure that that's part of our DNA as a company?
Yeah, I think there's a mindset as a starting point. And I'll use an analogy. Well, not really. Karen is the queen of analogies, but I'll do my best. Many people on this call might be sports fans, right? So I would think about your sport, whatever it happens to be that you like to watch. Baseball, football, American football. Just kidding, everybody. Don't come after me. Hockey, right? The best player that you can think of, right? Why on earth would they practice? They've been doing it since they were 5 years old, 4 years old. I mean, they started them young in some sports, right? Why do professional teams practice?
Well, I'm only as good as I am yesterday, or as good as I am today. I've got to continue to make my skills better because everyone around me is getting better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bob, I would also add, I will add to that. It's, we're not producing product on an assembly line that's getting delivered. That's already happened. Now there is a problem or a question or a demand from the consumer, and they have to reach out, and someone from your organization is personally responsible for helping them at that point. The product has met a certain criteria or didn't meet that criteria. And we deal with this all the time, and we believe that tough skills are for any client-facing individual, whether you're in sales or in service. Okay, so you're talking about a tech coming to my house. Yes, I want at the bare minimum that they should know who I am, what my concerns are, and all that information is data. But then they ring the doorbell and it's human to human. And I have a barking dog, and maybe they're afraid of dogs. Maybe I haven't had power for 3 days. Whatever the situation is, it's pretty already intense. They're meeting us at an intense moment. And we want to make sure that we have the skills to diffuse that, to meet them where they are, to have empathy for them, and to have the technology or the technical aptitude, but to fix the problems. Okay. I think that it's critical, and it's human to human. There's no script you can provide to them. Every situation.
Hold on a minute. You're talking to contact center folks.
I'm talking about field service ringing the bell.
But let's talk about the contact center for a minute, because I agree with you. There shouldn't be no script. There should be prompts, but there should be no script. I was on a call recently, and they were talking about how disconnected the customer says they feel from the contact center, that the people are not human enough, the people are not interacting, and then we begin to talk about what they do, and their agents are not allowed to go off script. But what you're advocating is having a conversation, right? Is that correct?
Yes. Amen.
Yeah, what I'm advocating is a tough skill, and it's bundled together, and people often don't realize it, but it's questioning, which is good, asking good questions to uncover the situation, but more importantly, actively listening. because the next question comes from your active listening. Tell me more about that. Let me understand that. Did I get that right? That would diffuse so much already, because the people feel like they're being heard, that they're being understood. And at this critical point, while they're calling you and the bot didn't give them what they wanted and they gave the data into the system and we're still asking that, this is what they want. They want to be understood. They want to be heard. They want to be validated in a real way. Not, I'm sorry for the inconvenience. That doesn't really meet me. That's a script.
This is all music to my ears. To go back a little for Glenn and Karen, since you guys don't live and breathe contact center like Bob and I do. If you think about the training curriculum of the average contact center, not just the average, every contact center, it is mostly product and tech. And then, there's one day soft skills. Hey, be sure to say your pleases and your thank yous and what have you. There's a reason it was labeled soft skills, right? It's intentional. It's like, you got all this over here. We'll focus on time. And by the way, do this. And part of why I'm so excited to talk to you guys is I think you're advocating for flipping that a little bit, maybe not to 90-10, but like this thing is the harder part. It's not the tech, it's not the product. Technology is getting easier and easier to use, right? We're all in the Salesforce ecosystem, clicks, not code. That the hard thing, again, the rocket science is this human to human piece, and it's the part we spend the least time. So can either of you talk a little bit about one, why you think we got to this place? Why did we make it soft skills and not spend attention to it? Is it because we just didn't know how and we were scared of this thing? Like, how did we get here before we can even go into how we move forward?
Let me go back to round out the analogy I started of why the most seasoned athlete that you can think of practices. And Karen talked about it. It's because they're in the heat of the moment, despite being trained on all the pieces you just spoke about. I know my product, I know our offering. I've learned all those facts. I'm being met not with facts on the other end of that phone. I'm being met with a combination of facts and maybe intense emotion and what the hell happened to me in my day. That's an intense moment. What I need in that moment, in the same way that, again, pick your sports analogy, right? Needs in that intense moment of sport is muscle memory. So what muscle memory have I trained on? How good am I at actually quickly listening, not dismissing, taking on that emotion, but not taking it on top of myself, but acknowledging it, reframing, understanding, right? Asking a good question, clarifying, pivoting towards a productive conversation. Turning that emotion around, that's a tough skill, but that takes muscle memory. And I would argue that takes practice. I would also say you guys probably all learned that the hard way. And you built that over time, right? But there's not a professional sports team out there that only does game days.
Well said.
So where's the practice?
Yeah, there's almost none of it today, and again, it's by the wayside. And I think, and Bob, I'll be curious if you agree with this. I just think about the average contact center. Who the heck is going to train this stuff in the room? We have really smart people who know the product. We have people who can do the deal. But if I just think about my toolbox when I used to run a contact center, training is good at product. They're good at, it's just not a skill that over time we have really focused a lot of attention in. We focused more on the X's and O's.
Well, they're not. We brought them on for their information, but who's going to train it? I've got to have somebody in my organization who's passionate about it, or I need to go outside my organization and find somebody who's passionate about it, who lives it and breathes it and talks about it and engages in it. Camp 4 is that place. Again, not a shameless plug for Camp 4, but a shameless plug for Camp 4. We have seen, I have seen what it does and how it affects the people that take the training. You know, Michael Jordan. To continue on the sports analogy, Michael Jordan says constantly that he would not have been who he was without Pippen beside him. But he also talks about his coach and how if that was not there, he would not have been who he is. So what's interesting is we all need that coach. We all need that support. So how do you, Glenn or Karen, how do you support that to an organization? What's the best path for getting people excited about the tough skill, to want to be that person, when sometimes this job is a tough job that needs tough skills, right?
Yeah.
So let's parse that out a little bit, because there's the coaching. Then the question is, what's the common language? So let's start with common language. If there's some framework that we have that says this is the way you diffuse a situation, right? Okay, we learned the framework. It's step 1, step 2, step 3. Coaching can be really effective if we're both know that that's the framework for how to diffuse a situation. Then we can have a productive conversation about how did it go? What could have gone better? Tweak this over here, and you could have gotten that back on point. So there's sort of an agreed to structure, a common language. That's number one, that then enables that coaching conversation to be more focused. And again, those are fast conversations in between fast calls, right? Like right. I can imagine these coaching sessions are more than like 8 seconds between you got to pick up the next call. So you have to have a common language sitting underneath there and a common frame in order for that to be effective. What I'd be interested in, from what I understand, is that in this hybrid world, you might be not seeing your coach as much in person right. as you used to. So I'd be interested to explore that a little bit, because I think the environment's also changed that made that, what I just said, even more challenging potentially.
Agreed. And while we're on that topic about the environment, I want to talk a little about technology. I know a good portion of our audience are implementing technology in the contact center, and we'll come back to the front line in a bit. But Karen, I'll be curious from a technology perspective, where does this fit in? If I'm listening to this and I'm like, I'm just the guy who does the tech and I implement the thing when they tell me, does this apply to me, or is this really just focused on people who support the end consumer?
So Amas, I'm going to take a stab at this first to make sure if I got this right. Like, if I'm the person responsible for the technology, are you saying I'm responsible for implementing it correctly?
Correct. Yes, I'm the guy who builds these IVRs. I build the chatbot. I am all of those things for the contact center. The contact center is my customer.
Correct. So if I understand, they're my customer. So they're in the same exact situation. Their customer is face to face, so they need the same tough skills. They have to understand, right? So there's a gap. I always believe there's a gap, and this is the purpose and our mission inside of Camp 4 is to fill that gap. That's what we do, with this enablement, this tough skills, this practice, this idea. But there's a gap between knowing technology, okay, and the higher and easier and better. And we're surrounded by technology. So now we have certifications, but there's a gap between being certified and being a consultant. And that gap that we fill is tough skills. So certification says, I know the platform, I've taken a test, that's my credentials and why I'm in the room, but that doesn't mean I can explain it to you. It doesn't mean I'm listening. It doesn't mean I can articulate it for someone else who's not certified. It doesn't mean that I can present or demonstrate the features and functionalities so that you can make the best educated. So they need that set of skills. Your people who are responsible for the technology are responsible for bringing the technology to the people.
Wow.
It has to come off the shelf, and then it's got to get over to them.
I love the way you frame that. Go ahead.
So you're telling me that if I'm running a contact center and I've got new technology coming into my center, I need to make sure that I'm hiring consultants who understand how to understand my business, not just understand how to duplicate my technology. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah. That you're unique, and they need to come in with their implementation and understand where we are, what's our current state, what's our future state, what parts of the system need to be customized. And often we all know, because we're systems integrators at one point in our life, that the end part of that is the user training, and that gets locked off too. Like that's equivalent to tough skills. They'll figure it out on their own, or we cut the budget and we don't tell them about the change management. Yeah, they'll do a form of adoption. Oh, we made these 3 changes to the system. Did you inform them? Yeah, we put it on Slack. I was out that day. I missed that. Sorry. Yeah, but that was their communication. So I do believe that there's a big part that's happening. You want someone not that just knows the technology. So it's the trifecta. They know the technology, they understand your industry, and they're consultants.
Makes sense. You're listening to the Contact Center Show. I've got my partner in crime as usual, Bob, and we are talking with Karen Freed and Glenn Stoffel. They are with Camp 4, and they're getting us smart about a new thing I'm sure you guys are learning called tough skills. So Bob, in the history of call centers and contact centers, I doubt that many people have called in to say things are going great, Mr. Company, the delivery was perfect, everything is awesome. And yet, I feel like lately, those same calls, those same emails, texts, what have you, are getting even harder. Not only is no one calling to say how great things are, those interactions are getting even harder, more contentious. Why do you think that's happening, Bob?
So, since I've been around the contact center for a while, and in my mind, since the invention of the IVR, we have been trying to scrape calls or interactions off of humans. We have done it with IVRs, we've done it with self-service, we've done it with web, we've done it with personalization on the website. We've done it now with bots, and we just keep trying to scrape the easy stuff, or the things that we can handle, we believe we can handle without human interaction, and a lot of that is driven by cost versus customer experience. So with that, what comes is when I get to a human, I have 2 expectations. I want you to know. I want you to know where I've been and what I've already done, so that you can catch up to where I am as a customer. But I'm also already just a little bit off center towards you're wasting my time, because I've done all these things and I still don't have an answer. My printer's been down for 2 hours. My electricity's been out for 3 days. I'm having a problem with my benefits organization around HSAs, and it's been multiple phone calls and multiple emails and multiple interactions. So by the time I got to a human in a chat environment, I was already unhappy. So it is a world of heightened expectations based on what you've already put me through, that makes that human now not, how many of us in the contact center have said, so I know this is not your problem, and I know you didn't create this, but let me tell you what I've been through to get to you. And then we have a conversation. So we try to be nice. Nobody wants to be Attila the customer. But what what it sounds like is that I then need to get that person to be a little bit of a negotiator, a little bit of a diffuser, a little bit of a
therapist,
a bomb technician. I need that person to have the rubber walls that you have to be able to not bump their heads against the wall whenever they're trying to solve the problem. So tough skills to me become even more important. How do we make sure? How do I, as the contact center guy or woman, Glenn or Karen, how do I sell that to my boss, to the CFO, to the person who says you're already spending too much money on training, you're already spending too much money on interactions with your employees?
I'll start there, and Karen follows suit. But Bob, I'm pretty sure also bomb technicians practice because they know the cost of the explosion.
Right.
So let's tune into what the cost of that explosion, metaphorically, is. To first start unpacking why you should pay to teach people these skills, right? You're trying to diffuse something. But also, I just want to come back to a phrase that you used, that we're scraping things away. And I think as we're scraping away the easy technical things, I think something else got scraped away. And it's grace. It's the customer's possible amount of grace that they could possibly have when they do get on the phone with your contact center agent is gone.
Ooh, I like that. I like that word. I don't think I've heard that word in a contact center phrase. Tell me more.
Look, I mean, it's you start with 100% bank of actually, I don't know what you start with. Different people start with different levels of what their grace is going to be when they get on the phone or interact with anybody, right? But let's just presume that through that a process where we tried to do the easy thing and they got more frustrated, that by the time they get on the phone with our agent, they have zero or little grace. They have little or zero benefit of the doubt possible still left in them at all to give. It's been taken. Could be deficit. So who are you putting on the phone with that person? It's a bomb. It's literally a bomb, an emotional bomb. So sorry for the segue there, but interesting. But let's tie into that, because it's somebody's ability to deal with that, right, is going to be the ability to deal with the downstream effect of that bomb going off, whatever that, again, metaphorical bomb going off actually costs us as a business. Maybe it costs us a lost customer, non-renewal. Maybe it costs us a lawsuit. Maybe who knows what, right? So I think we got to get to that. What is the to answer your question? Maybe Karen, you could jump on there to answer this more pragmatically and less metaphorically. But let's start with the pain that's caused from that explosion. There's a financial cost there that has to be part of the business case of why you invest in those skills.
Yeah, Glenn, I think I like the way this is unpacking and unwinding for us here. It is the tensions. We're coming in at a higher level. Things have already been elevated because of the idea that I could have been doing self-service, because there was a portal in which I thought I was able to help myself. I've done everything I possibly could to advocate for myself. Okay. So you're talking about emotionally charged conversations, and have we upped the skills of the people answering the phones? We've upped the technology, but have we upped the skills? Like Glenn and I meet companies and organizations all the time, and we do something called upskilling, because they want to move from small business to enterprise. They want to sell bigger deals. Well, guess what? With bigger deals, tougher conversations, more tough skills need to show up. And so because we've scraped this, and it's great that people could take care of the easy things. But when you're meeting them, like I said, we're already at a critical point. It's a difficult conversation. I always think about, I go to the self-checkout line. I don't know why I do it, and I'm humming along. And then ultimately, I think I'm helping the company out by me checking it out. I didn't get a discount. I'm paying the same for my cottage cheese as if someone else was checking me out. And then the red light goes on. The person comes over and I'm very kind and I'm happy. And thank you so much for helping me help you. Right? Like that's kind of where they're meeting me. And I'm continuing on. I think I'm savvy, but now I'm up to this thing that I have to weigh, and I'm sorry, were they organic grapes or regular grapes? You're not making this easy for me. They come back the next time, you know what? I'm frustrated. And this person technically knows, he's never yet made eye contact with me. He zaps his thing in front of him, you know, like his scanner, and he punches a bunch of stuff and he walks away and my next issue shows up. So yeah, I think as we automate things, the level of automation makes for a level of technology, and automation leaves for tougher skills necessary. This guy was the cashier, and now he's on the self-service line fixing problems. He's no longer a cashier, he's fixing problems. He needs different skills.
That is so good. I want to go to hybrid for a second before I get back to this ROI. You know, the contact center, like many industries, took a turn towards hybrid and more remote and et cetera. So even the term contact center, we may need to come up with something else, because I don't know what the center is in the future. But what it means, though, in practice, that I want you to comment on, is the interaction between me and if I work in the contact center, and my leadership and all of that is no longer face to face. Like, I remember, gosh, the late 90s, early 2000s, I was a manager in the contact center, and we had this role where you would have supervisors and people would walk up to you. And once you saw someone walking up to you, we all wanted to take a break, because we knew what that was. It was an escalated call. But the person had to look you in the eyes and tell you, and I could see their level of emotional state and all those interactions. And you would walk around the contact center, shake people's hands, touch it. And now today, most of these interactions are digital, right? They're, you know, Slack, Teams, et cetera. I want to talk about, what does tough skills look like when I cannot look you in the eye, when I cannot smile, when we don't have this, and most of this interaction now is via text. Does this all still apply, or is it something different when it's not in person?
Yeah. So one of the things, Amas, that's a really like a good, you know, what's actually happening is, in order to bring your brand alive and bring yourself there and provide feedback, there's 3 V's that are affected by that. It's what you say. Okay. That's your verbal. That's your mastery, your technology, what you understand. Your vocal, how you say it, and your visual. And right now, we've eliminated visual completely.
Well, we eliminated, just to push back a little bit for a second, we eliminated vocal in some ways also, because we're slacking you. We're typing with you. So I didn't mean, I wasn't mad at you. I was trying to give you an answer in a hurry. That's a different, like, if I'm thinking about me trying to coach an agent, or it, like, one of the things that we know as leaders, we should emulate what we want our people to do, but they can't see me anymore. They can't be with me anymore. So they're off in another place. They're not in a center. So what changes in that as a supervisor? How do I do those 3 V's when 2 of them are suspect at this point?
All 3 could be suspect at any point. Yeah. So you're talking about the idea of actually becoming a high performing team.
Right.
That's what we're talking about. In the absence of these things, how do we behave? There was an exercise that I did with my team at one point. I need to know what you look like when you're stressed, or what you sound like when you're stressed, and how you behave when you're stressed, for instance. But like, you put these teams together, and again, I don't need to simulate it if they're not together, but they work together, they practice together in this environment, whatever environment it is, hybrid, in person, or completely remote. And that's the manager, the supervisor has to have this common understanding of, this is how I provide feedback. This is how it's going to be. I'm going to give you 2 pieces of feedback. One is about the process you followed. Amas, right. You know what? You did steps A, B, and C. You did what you were supposed to do. Okay, that's great. That's quick feedback that I can give you. You followed the process. What's missing is the execution, how you did it. You didn't transfer between steps 2 and steps 3 correctly. You left the customer unsure. The way your tone was inaccurate. So I think having supervisors have frameworks to provide feedback and have general understanding of how we behave is really going to be extremely beneficial. That's a tough skill.
So talk about a little. So I'm assuming, Karen, that when you're doing this training and you're doing it remote, that back to Glenn's comment, I believe it was Glenn that said we need a framework and consistent words. Maybe it was you. You're giving both the employee, the supervisor, and the team a common framework to start from, to begin to talk consistently about what we should look like, sound like, and be like. Is that correct?
Yes. When we upskill an organization, they not only get these frameworks, and it's not onesies and twosies, because if I teach Bob how to do this, but he goes back into an environment where he never gets to practice it, no one understands it, they think Bob's got some superpowers because he's following these frameworks, but it's not broadly known or well understood, then Bob's an individual hero in a sea of ordinary. But when we surge through the entire organization, and now we're feeding off of others, and it's ingrained in our methods or in our process, then we're practicing it and we're preaching it, and then people say, oh, it's in your DNA. That's how it gets into your DNA, is it gets ingrained into the process. You're doing it on a daily, in a ritual. And I think that's a thing that organizations are missing right now. They'll send 1 or 2 people to go to Cornell and learn these skills, but those people don't come back. They're not the trainers. They're not coming back and teaching everybody else. You upskilled 2 people.
I think about that in the context of, if you and I watch a Brene Brown TED Talk, which we all love, if you and I watch it at the same time or watch it on the same day, the next day when we have conversations, we're in sync about the concepts that Brene was talking about. Mm-hmm. But if I watch it and I try to talk to you the next day about how amazing this concept is that Brene Brown, it may resonate, but it falls flatter than if you and I are on the same wavelength, right?
Yes. So what you're talking about is what Glenn and I refer to as amplification. Mm-hmm. Okay, it's going to echo back, and we're going to amplify this. If you and I both watch this, if the 4 of us collectively just did this, it surges, it grows exponentially. It has the likelihood of it sticking becomes natural, because I gave a framework, and we're building the skills around that, the bones, the habits, the muscles that sit behind it. And if we collectively do that, it does get ingrained a lot quicker. And one of the things that we offer, because people like, oh, we're going to have this one-time learning event and all 200 or 800 of our reps are going to go through it. And then 4 reps left and 7 got hired. Now those 7 people have no idea what this chant is that we're talking about. So we want to make sure that it's an ongoing thing, that as you hire new people, they get indoctrinated into this idea, into this belief, into how we operate, how we show up. These are the skills that are needed to do your job. So we work a lot with organizations on onboarding, because this has to be taught.
It becomes, I think, even more critical in the hybrid world that you all described, because my individual input is less about the walkabout or what I overheard, and because I'm hearing other people take calls. I have a leader who's walking around sharing some insights, maybe on the fly, because the issue could be very topical that we're trying to address, that all customers are calling in because we're all going through a common thing. How do we extend that when I'm sitting in my living room taking calls? It takes a little more thought to how those tough skills get transferred than it used to when everybody was in the same physical space.
Yeah.
I wanna double click on something, and I always learn something talking to you, and Karen, when you talked about the 3 V's, etc. I do want to, before we go to ROI is where we'll wrap, I do want to talk about, so that folks hear what we're saying and no one is listening to this who works in a contact center. and think that we are talking about pleases and thank you, because ladies and gentlemen, when I as a customer call, the more you apologize to me in that robotic sounding scripted voice, the madder I get. And Bob knows this. This is what soft skills is today. So I want to make sure you two know, like, where we are starting from. The contact center is in the business of interacting with other humans. Every contact center who's listening to this, and if any of you disagree, please shoot Bob and I a note. We know that your soft skills are apologize, sound this, and that's all it is. So I want to make sure that it's clear to folks, and if you guys can elaborate on, is this what you guys are talking about? More pleases, more thank yous, or is this something else?
I'll start out there. First of all, I'm glad you talked about robotic voices, because we have to address the robot in the room. Bob said, we're teaching tech to become more human, and I think the biggest risk we have is that we're teaching humans to become more robotic.
Yeah.
So like let's just have fun with ChatGPT for a second, and just say, okay, what if when somebody called in, I could just type, hey, ChatGPT, how should I handle it? And it gives me a script on the fly. I mean, beautiful. Not just we all say the same thing. No, this is a customized script based on every single word everybody said. So then there I am. I'm the agent, and all I got to do is read it. This is an easy job, right? Now I don't want a bot to say it, because that's a robotic voice. Yeah. But now try to have a human say it. It's worse. It just became an awkward robot. Right? Anyway, a little sidebar there, but like,
I believe
there's a risk there.
I believe I do know what you're talking about, and I understand completely that your problem is a problem. We've all had that call. We've all had that script call.
Yes. So yeah, let's talk about what elevated from please and thank you. Please and thank you worked when we were unplugging the modem and plugging it back in, but now the portal and the bot can tell them to do that. So by the time they've called us, that's no longer working. So some of the elevated tough skills, we put them into these fancy names and wrappers, but help us understand the intention of why we want to have tougher skills. And one of them is being human at work, to Glenn's point. Engaging, understanding emotional intelligence, who you are and how you influence the other person on the phone, which is key to their success. How you can flex your communication style. So it's make sure what I'm saying can land and be understood by the person who I'm talking to. Am I speaking too technical? Am I speaking too direct? And this person really wants to have more an expressive. These are higher levels, and they might not be something you can handle in a high transaction customer service engagement. But if these are true big problems that we're solving for the person on the line who's already elevated and concerned, we also talk about, as I mentioned earlier, question and listening, asking good questions to unfold what the problem is, and actively listening. There's an entire spectrum of listening. There's listening to be polite, there's listening to be curious, and then there's listening for understanding. And really, that's what we want to teach them, is listen to understand what's happening. These people want to be heard. We have something called managing relationships. And can you imagine this person that just dialed an 800 number and got to me? We're in a relationship. It might be a quick relationship, but it is. And I have to navigate through that. And it's a critical conversation because they reached out to me and they own my product, or they own an interaction with me. So I need to learn how to manage that quickly. I leverage my communication skills, my questioning and answer. I leverage my emotional intelligence. It's really the master part of this. So managing relationships, people wouldn't think that a call center actually does that. They manage calls, they manage cases, but they're managing a relationship with your customer. And creating impact, because people won't care about the fact that you did it or the information that you provided. It's how you made them feel on that call. And that actually is probably the most impactful. I have been on with, I won't drop the name. Actually, I will. I'll promote American Express. I'm never disappointed when I get off the phone with American Express. And it's not because they solve every one of my problems. I've asked them if they can pay my bill and they've said no, right? Like they're not dreamy unicorns, but they always leave me feeling good. And they won't hang up the phone until they've done that. Now that's a high end. I know what that is, but they create an impact for me. I come in with a problem and they try their best to solve it. And even when they can't, I'm left okay. So those are the tough skills. We're not talking about please and thank you anymore.
That is beautiful. I want to go before we wrap up to ROI and what we do next. So on the ROI question, and Bob knows this very well, it's like, depending on your contact center, anywhere from 5% to 15-ish% of your interactions are responsible for like 80%. It's Pareto, right? It's also true with your agents. And what happens is when organizations figure out these are my problem calls, emails, what have you, they don't apply these tough skills to them. They instead take the tools they have in the shed, which is let's send the agent back to training. Let's do this. They use all those same tools. So I'll be curious if you guys have an opinion around what the ROI of this. Right, whether in hard and concrete, but conceptually, if I'm listening to this and I want to go here, what is the ROI? Is the promise that these 10% of interactions get better? How would you guys encourage our listeners to think about the ROI of investing in tough skills?
Yeah, I'll start there. We'll go back to the analogy of practicing diffusing bombs or something we were doing earlier. But so yeah, what's the pain? What is the pain of explosion? Whatever that emotional explosion is going to cause in the organization. I'm going to lose a customer. I'm going to not get a renewal, right? So follow the money that way, of course. I think the non-obvious place is, or maybe it is obvious, but I don't think people understand that. It sounds counterintuitive that I'm going to spend money, on developing my talent. And, again, it looks like a cost. It looks like the first thing that gets lopped off, right? It doesn't seem like it's core to my business. My business is selling XYZ products, right? So I'm going to invest in that. But I would venture to look for data that talks about, loyalty and turnover and sort of that side of the equation. I know this is a high turnover industry overall, so I don't know what type of small percentage movements in that make a difference to the bottom line.
Huge.
I know it costs a ton to retrain people.
Yep.
And you might be surprised. Like I'll share a quick story with you, and it's not contact center, but it is people at the front lines of a business. We were with a business that's built an application for financial services. So meaning these are customer success people whose job it is to represent the entire platform that is Salesforce.com plus the entire platform that they built on top of it. And they're at the front lines of taking angry calls from customers when something doesn't go right, because these are transactional based systems. And we did some tough skills training with this team, and the word that came back to us at the end of it was that this was nourishing. You say nourishing, like what does that mean? First off, amazing compliment for sure. But why did that person feel nourished? And it was because we were working on the very muscle that would allow them to actually deal with that high pressure, time sensitive, impatient person who has no grace left because the technology that was supposed to support their issue has a problem. Now I'm talking to you, human, in customer success. And we were just working on their muscle. We were just working on their ability to pivot that conversation and turn it productive, because that's what they want to do. That's why they take that job. That's why they're in it, right? They don't want to say no. They want to be able to turn that to a productive conversation. So I think that our customer there got a lot of loyalty because they were investing in their talent. Mm-hmm. I think that they felt invested in. You were working on me as a human. And by the way, that's not just in the moment, right? Dealing with that customer, that comes home with me.
Right.
I take that baggage home with me. I mean, some people can leave it at the door pretty well, but others you can bring it in to some extent. So that is a bigger ripple effect on people's lives. And I think that there's some loyalty and retention sort of metrics that sit underneath there that would go a long way to building the case as well.
Yeah, I'm going to agree. And Glenn, just as much as they bring it with them, a tough day comes home, these skills that we're teaching are transferable. We're not teaching them this tab and this process that only works in this service on this product. We're investing in them as humans, and that's where the loyalty comes, and their transferable skills. Trust me, everything we just spoke about works really great during Thanksgiving.
Well, I thought when you were talking about the relationship manager, Karen, it's almost like it's like marriage counseling or the skills that you're talking about how to manage relationships carry over into every other part of your life, right?
Yes.
Like when you go home, how you interact with your kids, how you interact with your spouse, how you. I was thinking how I interact as a customer. I know that if I'm nice to the person at the airport, I have a better chance of being upgraded than if I come in with an attitude. So if you can teach my people to be better relationship managers, then you can give them skills that go beyond what I'm trying to do in my company, and therefore I feel fulfilled as a person. That's a huge ROI that we don't talk about a lot in a world where cost runs everything.
And how is that person going to be the next time they get back to work in front of customers? Do we think they're going to be better? I think it's right. I'll share a quick story on this, about the transferability of this work to home. So we're in the consulting business. Our job is to solve, right? It's what we do. Give us more constraints, we figure out solutions, right? This all day long is what we do. And I imagine this happens in a contact center as well. Somebody calls up and we hear the clues and we're like, oh my God, I can solve this. And you're psyched, right? You are psyched. You just heard the three things and you know the solution. You pull that one out off the virtual shelf and you're about to lay it on. I got this. I hear you. And you lay the solution out and they're like, you're not listening. But I just solved your problem. You're not listening. This is a pivot I call listen or solve. And they might have just wanted to be listened to, maybe before you solve the problem. Some people might want you to solve the problem, direct, get right to it, right? There's a listen or solve moment. The reason this is applicable at home, if you ever came home from something and your partner, your kids, whatever, are talking about something, and you go right to solve, and they're just like, get angry at you, right? Because they just wanted to be listened to. They didn't want your solution, right? So anyway,
all the time, all the time. Like I live that. Like I am like I'm sure almost. I'm guessing all of us on this call as consultants. I am like, yep. You want an answer, and I struggle with all you just want is for me to listen. I have to actively stop myself from I have the answer. Let's no, that's spot on. We're running out of time, but I want to end by leaving folks book of quotes. But before we do that, for folks listening, and they heard all this and they said, Glenn and Karen, I am in. Can you let folks know where to buy the Easy Button? Is this on Amazon, or is there a place you put the thing, you plug in the technology? Bam, Tough Skills, everyone. Off we go. Let folks know where they can go get the Tough Skills Easy Button and solve all their problems.
Camp4network.com. It's the number 4 in the middle there. Or look Karen or I up on LinkedIn and schedule 15 minutes with us, and we'll have a conversation. We'll come out with a good learning and shape a solution for you.
Awesome. No easy button, no push the thing. You selling any gadgets?
That was pretty easy. Hit me up on LinkedIn and I'll problem.
So listen, we have you can swipe your credit card online and buy a seat, but you're probably looking for a more impactful solution than one person coming through it. So definitely. I'll also leave you with the age-old question. You know, Amas, you asked about the ROI, and I, in my previous life, had to set aside funds and knock on the door of my CFO and explain why we would want to invest in additional training. And some of that was cost savings, and some of that was increasing our margins, increasing our prices, making our people more valuable. But in the end, it's, what if we train them and they leave? What if you don't and they stay?
Yeah.
That's even worse.
Yeah.
It's up the game. You keep investing in technology and you think these people are just going to run through the front door and out the back door. They will stay, and they can be extremely valuable resources. Not every resource is technology. Some of these resources have heart, blood, and pulses. Emotional intelligence and the ability to use it correctly, I think, will yield a lot in the future.
Awesome. Let's wrap up. Let's go around. I'll start with you, Bob. Do you have any quotes you want to leave folks with today? It's our tradition, the way we end our show.
I found a good one that extends a little bit of what we're talking about. So I listen to the customer and I understand what their problems are, and I use my skills that I now have, my relationship skills. And what we also can do is learn. Bill Gates says the most unhappy customers are your greatest source of learning. So if I've got a situation with my customers and I solve it, how do I extract that from my people to begin to understand how to change my business to avoid the next one? So the ROI becomes, I solve that person's problem, but I look for ways to solve the bigger problem that existed as a result of that.
I like that. Glenn, any words of, you've been so quotable already on this show. I can't wait for folks to hear some of the zingers. Any quotes you want to leave us with?
I would just say professional teams practice, and let's not let our focus on making robots more human create a bunch of awkward humans.
I love that. Karen.
This is on the spot. Let's see. We believe that professionals practice, and we also believe that organization success moves at the speed of their talent, not at their technology.
That's good.
Organizational success moves at the speed of their talents, not their technology. That's beautiful. And for those of you listening, we're going to post Karen and Glenn's LinkedIn and website information if you guys want to go check them out. We've known both of these individuals and have lots of respect for them. As you guys know, we hardly ever bring on guests. And I've learned a ton today, and I hope you guys have gotten smarter about how to run your contact center. I'm going to give my quote. Whenever there's a human being, there's an opportunity for kindness. That's Seneca. But I think I learned ways to be kinder and picked up some tough skills myself. So this has been awesome. Parting words, Glenn and Karen, before we let you guys go, and really thank you so much for doing this. We are so thrilled.
It's a pleasure, guys. We really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for listening and letting us share our ideas and spending time with you.
Awesome.
Thanks to both of you.
We want to thank you for joining us on this episode of the Contact Center Show. If you would like to join the conversation, please visit us at contactcenter.tv. That is Contact Center, all one word, .tv. Or you can simply subscribe wherever you get your podcast. This has been a Beyond production.